Bonjour à tous et bienvenue à ce premier Disrupt. Donc, je m'appelle Hervé Racine, je suis le country manager de Sabio pour la France. Donc, je vous souhaite à toutes et à tous la bienvenue à cette demi-journée de présentation, de masterclass. Donc, je voulais simplement, vous remercier d'être là, remercier nos clients qui vont témoigner aujourd'hui auprès de nos équipes, remercier nos partenaires aussi, Genesis, Avaya, Snapcall et Verint, qui nous accompagnent dans cet événement, et aussi remercier grandement l'Agora qui nous accueille dans ses locaux aujourd'hui pour nous permettre de lancer cette première version de Disrupt. Donc, je vais laisser la parole à Stuart Dorman, qui est le Chief Innovation Officer de Sabio. Donc, cette première demi-heure sera en anglais, mais n'hésitez pas s'il y avait des questions ou quoi que ce soit à solliciter les équipes Sabio qui sont présentes aujourd'hui pour vous accompagner tout au long de cette journée. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Hervé. It's great to be here in Paris today. Apologies for me delivering this in English, not in French. Hopefully you'll bear with me. But I'm really delighted to be opening our first Disrupt conference here in Paris. We started Disrupt 9 years ago in London. Our first Disrupt in Madrid happened about 5 years ago, and we've been running it ever since. The popularity has been growing over that period. And yeah, this is our first one in Paris, which is really exciting. Really great to be here, the first of many, I hope. And we're also looking to take Disrupt to Amsterdam later this year as well. Now, what are we going to talk about today? Well, Disrupt has always been about thinking about bringing together experts from across the industry, from within Sabio, from our partners, from our customers, to talk about technology and how it's impacting us as customers and how we engage with the organizations that we all deal with on a regular basis. And we really like to look at how emerging technologies are affecting the way that customer service can be delivered. So when we were thinking about one of the key themes to kick off Disrupt today, there really was only one subject that has been dominating the headlines over the last few years, and that's this subject of artificial intelligence. So we're going to focus on that to start the day today. AI is in the process of disrupting every single part of society. Every organization, every sector will be impacted by AI in some way. But for those of us working in the customer service sector, customer experience is at the forefront of this change. You know, AI is the place where it will first be adopted in the world of customer service. So AI really or customer service has become the battleground for artificial intelligence. And this is why we see so much interest in this space at the moment from the technology companies, you know, particularly the hyperscalers. We've all seen the likes of Amazon and Google and Microsoft all developing products to work in this space because they recognize that AI is the place where data can be both generated and consumed by people delivering service. And the productivity gain there is set to be huge if it's deployed correctly. So we're going to talk about that. And I think it's really important because the pace of change in this market is so fast at the moment. It's really important that all of us take time to come along to events like this to try and learn about what's happening in AI, learn from each other, and try to keep pace with what's going on in this space at the moment. So I'm going to share some of my ideas, and hopefully you'll find that useful. So why is this space why are people so excited about this space at the moment? Well, as we talked about, artificial intelligence is reshaping every part of society. And the reason for that is that AI is a general purpose technology. And general purpose technologies tend to impact many, many different sectors and many, many different parts of society at the same time. We've had a number of different general purpose technologies over the last few centuries, you know, the steam engine, electricity, the internet, and so on. But the pace of AI, the way it's infiltrating across society and the world, has been nothing like we've ever seen before. If you think about these previous general purpose technologies, they've required lots of investments in infrastructure to really reach us as individuals. Think about electricity. We had to build power stations and we had to lay cables and build things into our homes. If you think about the steam engine, we had to lay railway tracks. So it took many decades for this technology to start impacting society. But pretty much now, artificial intelligence is being made available in real time to everyone with an internet connection across the world. And already in the world today, we have more people with access to the internet than have access to electricity, even now. So this is set to really accelerate the pace of change and the pace of innovation across the world. So it's an incredibly exciting time, and we are working at the forefront of that. So just to give you a bit of an illustration of this graph is showing the capability of the frontier models, the latest generative AI models that are being released by the likes of Google and Anthropic and OpenAI. And what it shows you along this graph here is this is called a GPQA performance. It's a bit like a test that was created for AI. It's a Google-proof test. Okay, and it covers many different subjects: chemistry, maths, physics, these types of things. And the idea is that the AI can try to do this test and it gets a score. Now, the average PhD student, a doctor, would typically score maybe 70, in the high 70% when they take this test. And just 6 months ago, the best AI models were scoring something like 50%, 60% nearly. But what we've seen from these latest models that are being released now, they're actually scoring in the high 80% for these tests. So just in the space of 6 months, we've seen a 50% improvement in the ability of these models to answer questions, and they're already performing greater than the performance of a PhD level graduate. And that's just in 6 months. So that's why people are getting so both excited but also maybe alarmed by the pace of development of artificial intelligence at the moment. And that's led a few people to think about where this is going. And some people talk about this concept of superintelligence. Anyone here heard of superintelligence? It's a coin? No, a term. So superintelligence is the combined intelligence of many, many humans put together, possibly even every human on the planet. So they talk about data centers full of brains. Okay, that's where people see this heading. We're not there yet. We may never get there, but this is the kind of talk that we're seeing coming out of big tech and Silicon Valley at the moment. You've probably heard of this other term, artificial general intelligence. And this is the point at which AI becomes as capable as us as a human at performing many, many different tasks. And again, we're not there yet. Some people think, maybe we're 5 years away from that at the moment. A lot of people are talking about it and a lot of people are getting excited about it. Where we are today is something called artificial capable intelligence, which is really the ability of AI to perform almost as well or as well as a human for a very specific set of tasks, but not across a general set of tasks like we can. It's not as adaptable as we are. So this is where we are today. And some people also refer to this as agentic AI. So you've probably heard the term agentic AI being used. Again, this is being promoted by Google and by Apple and all of these big tech companies at the moment. So I'll explain a little bit about what this means. I like to think of this as the third wave of AI, and I think it helps if we can understand the developments that have come before this to get us where we are today. And I'll explain a bit about what those are at the moment. So first of all, we have this idea of machine learning. Now, machine learning really came about from about the year 2010. And really, this was the first true form of artificial intelligence. The idea of AI actually came about back in the 1950s. But really, the capabilities at that point were nothing like what we would know as AI today. They really consisted of humans trying to encode the real world, maybe trying to encode a picture or a language or something like that. So they really weren't very intelligent. Machine learning has formed the basis of what we now know as artificial intelligence today. And this was the first time where we could actually teach a machine to learn how to recognize images or how to recognize language, how to understand speech recognition, these types of things. And that really has formed the foundation for AI as we know it today. You can almost think of this as a capability of recognizing patterns, so pattern recognition machines. And we've got this built into our phones and all of these types of things today. So that's really the foundation of AI. About 2.5 years ago, we then moved on to this next phase of AI called generative AI, which again, most of you will be familiar with if you've used ChatGPT or these types of capabilities. And in really simple terms, what this does is it allows you to take that previous capability of machine learning, which is to recognize patterns, and almost turn that around on its head and actually use it to generate patterns. So we can generate images, we can generate text, we can generate language. And again, that's what people have been getting really excited about over the last few years. We then move on to this third phase of AI, which people are calling agentic AI. Now, agentic AI adds to those previous capabilities, and what it gives us the ability to do is to define goals for the AI to go and complete for us. And once we've defined those goals, the AI can then go and complete tasks on our behalf. So it may, can fill a form out, or it can call an API and do something. But it can also act autonomously as well, which means it can make decisions on our behalf. We can give it a task and it can make decisions to go and complete that task. So this is where we are today. This has been the term that people have been using over the last few years to talk about this next wave of capability. Now, in the context of customer service, the vision for this technology is that it becomes a point that all of our customers use as their first point of interaction. So the customer can engage using natural language. It will understand the context of what the customer is looking to do. It can answer pretty much, most of the questions that customer has. It can maybe go and complete a task for that customer. So if they're asking it to update a system or make a booking, it can complete that task. And then it can escalate to a customer service advisor if needed, and it can hand the context over. Okay, so the customer service advisor knows what the customer's been doing previously. Now, I think this vision for AI is, I really do believe that this is the future for what we all should be building for. I think that every single one of our customer interactions, whether they be on email, chat, voice, will start with an AI conversation, and that AI will either solve the problem or at least escalate to a human. And I think that's what the world that we need to be preparing for now. And this is supported by, the likes of Gartner, who predict that 80% of customer problems will be solved by agentic AI by 2029, so in the next 4 years or so. That's a pretty bold statement. I don't know if you agree with that. That's a big vision. There's a lot to do for us to get to this space. But I do note that they've used the word problems here. Not every single reason that a customer contacts us is for a problem. So, what Gartner do say behind this is that they believe it could lead to a 30% improvement in operational efficiency. So I think that's probably more realistic. And again, this is the world that we need to be building for going forward. So when we start thinking about this agentic capability, for those of us that have built chatbots or voice bots in our organizations today, we're typically used to a very high level of control. We have to code every single step of the process in order to build these capabilities. And what this agentic AI gives us is the ability to be a bit more free-flowing, so we can give the AI a task and it can respond. But there is a bit of a danger there as well, because we all know with ChatGPT and some of these generative models, sometimes they can confidently give us the wrong answer. So actually the challenge that we have as organizations now is not necessarily the constraints that we have building these voice bots and chatbots. It's how we constrain the response of the model itself in order to give an accurate answer, and how we actually make sure that the quality is sufficient for our environments. And different organizations, different sectors will have different requirements there. And typically what we see is it's a combination of these high agency capability, generative responses with a more predefined set of rules that we can take something through. So that's the right balance between the two, is a combination of agentic and generative responses with something that you can have more control over. So if we think about this in the context of the demand that we have coming into our contact centres today. This is some data. This is European data, so it might reflect what you see today in your customer service centres. Some people have a bit less voice and a bit more chat, but broadly speaking, this is what we're dealing with today. Ever since I've been working in the customer service industry, which is over 25 years now, we've always been trying to focus on reducing telephony and reducing email because they are the most costly channels to deal with. And I expect you guys have had similar things. The challenge is, though, that that's not really reflecting how we as humans choose to communicate. And I like to kind of think of this in terms of our bandwidth. So most of you, when you think of bandwidth, hopefully this word translates okay, you tend to think of bandwidth as the speed at which you can transmit and receive information. You know, that your home broadband, for example, or your mobile phone, you can receive and transmit information at a certain speed. Well, we humans have similar constraints in terms of our bandwidth. Okay, so we can transmit information, we can talk, I can talk at about 150 words per minute. So that's my constraint in terms of my transmission speed. When it comes to typing on a keyboard, the typical human can type at about 40 words per minute. But when you think about using a smartphone keypad, that reduces further still. So maybe to about 20 words per minute. Maybe if I use gestures, I can increase my speed of transmission. Equally, receiving information, so when I'm downloading information from one of you, I can listen about the same speed that somebody can talk at me. But actually, I can read at about twice that speed. So it's twice as fast as me to read something as it is to listen. But when we look at things like images and pictures and text and icons combined together, we can actually have a significant increase in the speed at which we can receive information. And I'll give you a quick example of that now. So this is, some of you may have had one of these Alexa devices which are voice only. And if I ask Alexa, what's the weather like in London today, for example? So you'll notice if I issue the command to Alexa, I can ask it the weather in maybe a few seconds. It's a very efficient way of me asking a question and issuing my command. When I receive that information, it took Alexa about 20 seconds or so to play me the weather. And that's just on a voice channel. If we then do the same for something with a screen, I've used my iPhone here, but if I ask Siri, what's the weather like in London today? You'll see there very quickly, it comes back. So in less than a second, I've been able to download, absorb that information, a much more rich set of information much quicker. So I think this is a really important thing that we need to think about when we're designing both AI experiences, but also human experiences as well. If you think about the people that are trying to communicate with customers in our contact centres, they have similar constraints. So if they could share information with customers, it would make their jobs much easier. So I think this is an important thing to think about in terms of the way that we design systems, because most of us really today are thinking about how we can apply AI to asynchronous messaging and chat, because this is much harder. But what these new capabilities have done have allowed us to automate voice and email on a much bigger scale and do it to a higher degree of quality. And this is what customers are choosing to use as their preferred channel. So that's really important. So the other thing just to think about is, at the moment today, we think about channels and we think about customer choice and customers choosing one channel over the other. But actually going forward, I think all of these things are going to start to blend together. We think about customers choosing to use their voice to engage. And I think we're likely to see that increasing going forward because what we're working towards at the moment now is a single channel that customers can use where they can chat, they can exchange images, they can speak to the web, for example. And this is the future of how customer service will start to merge into a single place that people can communicate. And actually, Gartner are predicting that 30% of customer interactions will start in that way going forward. So the other thing to think about is we've talked about these AI agents as something that we build within our own organizations. But actually what we're seeing is that these AI agents are being built in the devices that we have in our pockets as well. We gave the example there of Alexa and Siri. Other vendors are building these out as well. And actually, this is really important because more and more journeys will be starting on these third-party AI devices going forward. So I'll just give you an example here. So this is something called Operator from OpenAI. If you go to their website, you can see this. And what in the example here, it says, find me a family-friendly campsite in Joshua Tree this weekend. And you'll see the video here. So what the customer's doing here is putting this request into, it's not working, hang on. Click on play there. No, that's not working for some reason. Okay, you can't really see it. But what's happening is they're putting their request in, and the operator is going off in the background and communicating with different websites, filling out forms, and trying to kind of complete the task for the customer. But what often these demos really gloss over is the complexity and the amount of information that's needed to go and fulfill this task. And what OpenAI's Operator does is it makes it look really simple, but actually there's a lot of information in the background needed to actually go and complete this task. So we need to start asking ourselves these questions about, how much information are we prepared to share? So think about another task this week. I'm going to London. Can you sort my hotel? What's being positioned to us, what's being sold to us by the big tech companies is that these AI will become a bit like a personal assistant. But actually, they're going to need huge amounts of information to go and fulfill these tasks for us. Things like access to our diaries, where do we want to stay in the city? What's our hotel preference? What's our budget? We think about another task. Can you book my car in for a service? Again, on the face of it, quite a simple task. But think about the amount of information that it needs to know in order to complete that task for us. Maybe another example here, my car insurance is up for renewal. Again, quite a simple task on the face of it, and these are the tasks that are being sold to us by the AI companies, but it needs to know lots and lots of information about me for this to be successful. So that's a concern for us as brands as well. So we need to think about the fact that these third-party AI solutions will increasingly become the gatekeepers between our customers and our organizations. More and more of customer journeys will be starting on these third-party AI agents, and the real concern is that we start losing control of the customer experience. We start losing the data that gives us information on our clients. Trust is a big factor as well. So we tend to think about trust in the context of data security. But actually, more and more trust is thinking about, do we trust these AI agents to go and complete a task on our behalf? So, again, we talked about the fact that we have to share lots of information. Normally, we think about trust as, do we trust that that information isn't going to be used against us, maybe to steal money from our bank accounts and this type of thing. But actually, it's more, will this be used to manipulate us in some way? We see this already on Instagram and Facebook with very targeted adverts. Imagine if they had access to all of this information and how they could potentially manipulate us. So the other thing we need to think about is whether we trust AI to actually do a good job of completing that task. And we think about humans. Us humans, we make mistakes, but we tend to be quite tolerant of mistakes made by other humans. Whereas, we tend to have very little tolerance for mistakes made by machines. So, at what point does the AI need to be, sufficiently more capable of completing a task than an equivalent human would be? And, the real key example of this is in a self-driving car, which probably is the ultimate AI agent. We are giving it agency. We're trusting it to go and complete a task on our behalf, which happens to involve taking us from one place to another. And we've been promised, by Elon Musk that self-driving cars will be here this year, next year, the year after, since 2016. Apparently, it's going to be here in June in Austin, in Texas. We'll see about that. But the promises that are being made by the big tech companies about the capabilities of AI are real, and people are believing them. And actually, in the case of Tesla, this has meant that, Tesla actually has the highest fatality rates of any car brand in the world. Because people are trusting its AI capabilities, and unfortunately it's leading to accidents. So all of this means that we need to think about the societal threshold of adopting AI, and the fact that just because the capability of the technology is there, sometimes it takes longer for society to really adopt this change. So we need to think about the human experience and how we design this capability to make sure that our customers are ready and willing to adopt it. But we also need to think about ways in which we can, use the technology not just to cut cost, but to deliver new experiences for customers. Because one thing that we do know is that human needs are infinite. No matter how much we have, we always want more. That's human nature. So as soon as we start delivering more efficient service to customers using AI, they will naturally expect more and more from us. So we need to really think about that. So just to kind of conclude, we talked about artificial intelligence. We've sort of touched on this idea of agentic AI. And we're going to be talking more about this as the day goes on. But the key thing really is how we adopt this within our organizations. And I think it's the organizations that are best able to be agile and to adopt this technology and to experiment are the ones that are going to be successful in taking forward this age of agentic AI going forward. So thank you very much. Hopefully you found that useful. And I think I'm going to hand over to Hervé.
Yes, thank you, Stu.